It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we continue our NFL draft prospect coverage leading up to the April 25th first round start here in Detroit, Michigan. In this episode, we'll look at the offensive tackle position. This class of tackles is very deep and full of first round talent. Who are the bookends and blindside protectors? Who can possibly slide inside, showing great versatility? We'll give our thoughts and break down the top prospects next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski, Drew, and this is our second episode here covering the 2024 NFL draft prospect classes. That draft will be here in the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan, starting April 25th on Thursday through Saturday the 27th. And joining me to talk about today, the offensive tackle prospects, is Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you doing?
Drew, I've been looking forward to this one for quite some time. Just because I'm a fan of the offensive tackle position and know it's great importance to a football team's success. So doing well. Hope you're doing well is in the same. So gonna be some fun here to talk about offensive tackles.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it. Being Lions fans, being from the state of Michigan, we know how important it is to win in the trenches, and certainly the Lions have put a huge emphasis on that, and with good reason. It's one of the reasons they were within a half of getting to the Super Bowl this year, a strong, stout offensive line. It's so easy to get enamored with the skill position players, and we are too. I mean, everybody. It's what makes this game great. But of all this, when you talk about the other positions, the offensive tackle spot really is it's getting to be that glamorous spot because of the importance of it and the profile of it, Coach. And this class is no exception. But we're going to talk about a lot more. Not just so much the pure tackles, but the guys that are more versatile, because as we know, as Lions fans, that's a huge premium. It's going to make a huge difference on where these guys get drafted. Talk about the versatility piece before we jump into it.
Yeah, position versatility is the name of the game. Really, it transcends every position and every position group in football, whether it's offensive line, defensive back. If you have position versatility, you can play safety and corner. You can play both inside and outside linebacker. You can play on the inside or the outside of a defensive scheme. You can play tackle or guard. And in this case, that's probably the music to the ears of the Lions and maybe center, because some of these prospects are that as well. That is going to be the type of player that the Lions are going to look at very closely early, middle, and late in this draft. And we certainly are going to be highlighting a couple of those individuals today.
Yeah, can't wait to get started on that. And we're going to jump into it now. And Coach, lots of big names on this board here. Talk about a couple that stand out for you.
We're going to be, talking about, about 9 of these players, or about 9 of these players, so to speak, today. 11 or so of these players today. But, it goes from the very top of the draft order right down into day 3, really. And many of these guys are going to go rather quick because this is a very, very talented group. Joe Alt of Notre Dame, Oluwafemi Fashanu, or Olu Fashanu, is what he really goes by, Olu, out of Penn State. We're talking about top 5 material draft picks right here. Talis Fuaga, from Oregon State. I know our new Michigan State football coach, Jonathan Smith, just speaks volumes about this individual. Another first-round draft pick tender. Marius Mims and J.C. Latham really can go back and forth. They're almost carbon copy prospects in some regards. They're also late first-round draft pick grades. Troy Fatanu is a guy that Lions fans, and we will be highlighting Troy here in a bit, should take a look at, because this is an individual that could have some intrigue for the Detroit Lions. Guys like Jordan Morgan from Arizona, Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, Graham Barton. Graham Barton is a young man that you, Drew, will be highlighting here shortly. And that is another person of great interest here in Honolulu Blue and Silver Nation. Kingsley Sumatai is another player, that's really almost near a first-round draft pick grade. Dominic Puny, another player. Keep your eyes on, Lions fans. That's a guy that could be of value to us. And really rounding out our top 20 here for the SPP offensive tackle prospect rankings is Patrick Paul from Houston, Kyron Amagaji from Yale, Blake Fisher from Notre Dame, Matt Goncalves from Pittsburgh, Javon Foster from Missouri, Christian Jones from Texas, Roger Rosengarten from Washington, Nathan Thomas from Louisiana, and then Ethan Driscoll, another guy that can play guard and tackle out of Marshall, round out the top 20 on the SPP big board. As of today, this is an addition that is before the combine adjustments.
Yeah, that's important to note too, because a lot can change in between. But we have precious little time in between now and in the actual draft, which is 10 weeks away. But there's a lot of prospect groups to cover, so a lot can change. But I got a feeling, Coach, not much is going to change here when we talk about the number one guy. Let's talk about Joe Alt from Notre Dame.
Consensus number one offensive tackle. I know Olufashanu has something to say about that, but there's a couple things that Mr. Alt does that I think separates himself a little bit from the other prospects. Like you had said, David, number one offensive tackle prospect on our big board, 6'8", 315-pound junior out of the University of Notre Dame, looking good in that golden dome. Out of North Oaks, Minnesota. He is another NFL NFL player's son. He's the son of 12-year NFL Pro Bowl offensive tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs, John Alt. This kid has the pedigree. He's grown up in that kind of environment. He understands football from a familial aspect. So that is something that we will be talking about throughout our coverage on multiple prospects, as we did in running backs and then also in future episodes. 2022 All-American, he took 2,178 career reps at left tackle for Notre Dame, all at the left tackle slot. He allowed 4 career sacks. So he played this position at a very young age, and really he's only allowed 4 career sacks. He's allowed 5 career quarterback hits. We're saying career hits. Out of 2,178 plays, he allowed 4 sacks and 5 hits. That's it. Great. And really, I mean, only 15 QB pressures or QB hurries. I tell you what, and no sacks allowed in 2022. I mean, we're going to talk about some guys that have impressive profiles in regards to their sack to snap ratio down the road. But Joe Alt was tested. And he really came up perfect in so many facets. This is a guy that is going to be drafted in the first 5 selections of the NFL draft.
Yeah, cannot argue with that, and will not argue with that, Coach. And I think, certainly, even though we joked about in some previous episodes how Notre Dame is not, even though they're considered a rival of Michigan, they're not really playing them that much anymore. But they certainly play a tough schedule every year. So those statistics translate very, very neatly in terms of high-level Division I football and certainly to the NFL. Talk about what specifically you really like about Joe Alt, Coach.
Well, I mean, this is a franchise left tackle. This is I know Peninsula plays right tackle for us, but we look into the Tony Baselli selections of the past, the Joe Thomas selections of the past. You look at these kinds of draft selections, and this is the type of draft selection Joe Alt is. You are selecting him to be your front line pillar of your offensive line for at least 7, 8, 9 years. And that's what some team is going to get when they select him. Great athlete with freakish size. And really, he's got great size and is a freakish athlete. You can reverse those 2 attributes and traits of his. They are just rise above all. He's got a sprawling wingspan and allows for tremendous reach, not only in his pass sets, but when we reach block on the perimeter to try to gain the edge from the offensive perspective and get something going on the outside or in a screen game or something of that nature, jet sweep, whatever you want to call, Joe Alt has shown a tremendous aptitude for those type of blocks. His elite agility for a prospect this size. He kind of moves like a tight end. And you can see so in some of his run blocking. He's a great run blocker, a great pinner. He does a great job of pinning and down blocking. And he does also a great job of pinning inside and sealing off linebackers at the second level. He's a very refined and technical player, something that you would expect at playing at a place like the University of Notre Dame. But let's remember, his dad is a 12-year NFL veteran of the offensive line. So this young man has lived and breathed the offensive line his entire life. Maintains an excellent pad level for a guy that's 6'8" to be able to sink his hips and knees down and not bend at the waist. That's outstanding. He's a great effort player. He plays to the whistle. He wants to bully and run through his run blocks. He has a little bit of that edge to him. He's very nuanced in hand fighting and in pass protection. We do see him two-hand punch a little bit. That's a technique that NFL offensive linemen try to get away from because it's a very easy way to get lost off balance and have somebody rip over the top of you and rush the passer. But, those are some things that, if there's any little nuances, and we'll talk about some weaknesses too, that he needs to work on, it's to stop with the two-hand punching. But he's very nuanced in hand fighting and being able to punch and leverage with one hand and as well. And Joe Alt is just supreme, Drew, just supreme.
I mean, before we talk about that in depth, Coach, and that's a great analysis. When again going more into coaching, it would strike me that they would repetition of really just getting away from that particular that double punch technique, to get away from that and and just keep practicing, repeating different techniques. Like you said, he's got more tricks in his bag, but would that be something that you think could be easily corrected?
Oh yeah. They can just take it out of the repertoire. I mean, it's just going to be something he's going to work on in drills, something that's going to be shown in film, and people are going to entice him. Guys like James Houston, those kinds of pass rushers, they're going to try to sink into you or look like they're sinking into you and trying to go nose to nose, like they're going to bull rush you and try to get those two hands extended just to sliver outside and rip or make some sort of hip flip of the hips and get back outside and gain your hip and then rush the passer. Those are the things that he is just going to have to, through his experience, become a little bit more savvy to and not yielding to that, because he's devastated. You can look on YouTube and see his two-hand punches, and then they look like highlights because he buries guys with them. But you're not going to do that to one of the Bosa brothers. You're not going to do that to Aiden Hutchinson. Have fun doing that to Chris Jones. That becomes a little more difficult. So. Yeah. That's just one of that's very correctable to answer your question. Very correctable.
No, that's good. I appreciate that. What else are you seeing, Coach, that may be concerns?
Well, he's long, and if you look at it, I encourage you to look at YouTube a little bit. You can see that maybe he can look like he gets a little top heavy. He can lose his balance a little bit, but I don't think it's so much that he's a waist bender and loses his balance that way, being top heavy. He's just 6'8" and 315 pounds. He's got a heavy top. I mean, it's just physically the way it is. But he can lose in some of the bigger physical battles. I can see like a guy like a Calais Campbell or somebody like that, for whatever he's got left, or a Trayvon Walker who likes to bang and physically engage you. Our guys down in Philly, those type of defensive players, Brandon Graham, they could bully him up a little bit and get him to lose balance a few times.
Yeah.
That does happen. He does a little, like I said, I mean, I really think he moves quite well and really looks like a tight end, but could he be a little stiffer in the lower half and bend at the waist at times? That is something that we've got to get away from. That's going to be something that he's going to want to instantly correct when he sees it on film. He can be a little susceptible to the long rusher, the speed rusher off the edge. Aiden Hutchinson comes to mind, guys that really bend on you that way. That is going to be a challenge for him because he's really going to have to get that hitch step going in his pass set. He can lose a little bit of leverage too, as he allows for too much people to kind of get within his shoulders and punch and engage with him and kind of fight the battles and bully up and play physical football. He's got to try to stay out of those kind of battles where he can then be kind of minimized and bull rushed and really not be as effective as a reacher and a pass setter as he is. So there's some nuances. There's some things that Joe Alt's got to work on. Is it nitpicking a little bit? I mean, you're going through these things with a pretty fine tooth comb, because I tell you what, you can go on YouTube and look at several of his different clip ups. This guy is super impressive.
Yeah, he's a top 5 pick, and he likely would have been higher than that, even if not for the huge quarterback class that's coming out this year. But yeah, and I mean, you've got teams like for instance, our Detroit Lions, who we would love to have a Joel Alt, but you've already got a Taylor Decker and a Peninsula, so probably not yet, not gonna happen for the next couple of years at least. But yeah, this is a guy that every team is going to look at to some level, and that's what makes you a day one guy and certainly a top 10 guy. We see him as top 5. Joel Alt is a very, very good football player. He's going to give me a perennial Pro Bowler as far as we're concerned. So good luck to the team that gets him, because they're gonna have a hell of a prospect on their hands there for a long time. Here's another guy, Coach, and you mentioned him earlier, Fashanu, and from Penn State. He's in the conversation too. What do you like about him?
Big Olu. Yes, he is. He's a top 5 considerate, certainly top 10. Big offensive tackle out of Penn State. Also a junior, number 2 on our board. No, why is he number 2 and not number 1? I see Joel a little bit more impressively in the run game than I've seen in clips of Olu Fashanu. I think he's been a little more effective as a run blocker than Olu Fashanu. But that's not to take away anything from this kid, because he's a superior prospect. Olumoyiwa Fashanu is from Waldorf, Maryland. He played in Washington, D.C. He was a high school teammate of Caleb Williams, who was arguably the number 1 quarterback prospect. Wink, wink. We'll see you here later in April when we cover that position group. But he initially was a big-time basketball player. That's what he did in his more formative years through his 12, 13 age area and through middle school and early high school. Kind of was a basketball-focused player, but grew into this football body and became an outstanding offensive lineman at the Big Ten level. The 2023 Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year was a 2023 All Big Ten and All Academic Big Ten selection, which shows to speak to his intelligence and his IQ and his ability to learn and adapt is very, very strong. 1,347 career reps at left tackle for Penn State. He never has allowed a sack.
Wow.
Never allowed a sack in his career. In fact, he's only allowed 1 career quarterback hit. This is a highly, highly productive offensive tackle from the left side and that blind side. He's who you want on your left side. This is the type of football player you want at your left tackle. He just does not give up ground from a passing standpoint.
He is very impressive, and that's extremely impressive to. I mean, for career statistics, that's just unreal. He's right in that conversation without no question. And talk about why that is, Coach, in more detail.
Well, he's an elite athlete. I mean, like I said, as Drew, you and I have experienced a lot of athletic experiences together. Many as teammates and as pickup players and stuff like that. And we had some wars during the summers, especially in the summer of 1996, playing some round ball in a few different blacktop areas.
Yeah.
We weren't Rucker Park success stories or legends, but in Kalamazoo we played, and we know how, just watching, how phenomenally athletic some basketball players are and how not easy that is. He's a former big-time basketball prospect. He can two-hand tomahawk dunk at 6'6", 319. He's an impressive kid that way. Very well-proportioned body mass. He does not look like he weighs 319 pounds. People would, if you took that out of the equation, people would say, 240, 250. I mean, he's a lean 319 at 6'6". Great agility, and his pass protection nuances are extremely impressive. As impressive as Alts. They're as impressive. He fights hands. He does not have near the two-hand punch reps that I saw from Joe Alt. So he's already kind of got that phased out of his game. He's very strong anchor in his pass protection, which means he does not yield in bull rushes. He's not just a guy that can rip you off the edge and pack you up. He can bury in there and sink you inside and throw you to the inside of the mass of the line as well. Very big, heavy, strong hands. Outstanding reach blocker. Again, a guy that blocks very well on the edge, which you need in both gap power and zone schemes. So this is like I said, he is a franchise left tackle in his own right, and another player that he's right there with Joe Alt, right there with him as a prospect.
Yeah, now we're, like you said, we're maybe nitpicking or even splitting hairs, but what would in your mind, and I know you talked about a little bit about the run blocking, what kind of separates Alt from Positional just enough to put him at number 2 on our board? We'll talk about what he needs to work on.
I think he's so adept at pass setting that he plays with a higher pad level, and that doesn't lend to the greatest run blocking. Can you grade the road with a higher pad level? You can, but you better be that physically dominant. And I think what we are going to see, and the University of Michigan did this certainly in their game versus Penn State this year, is that they were able to kind of just what they call stonewall him. We'll talk more about what stonewalling is when we get into the interior defensive line, which we talked about at length last year as well. But he's prone to those stone walls or stalemates at the line of scrimmage a little bit in the run game. And that's not, he's not going to be, he's not the greatest movement creator in this draft far and away. And that is something to be said. He can get leveraged a little bit in the run game, which, that's something he's going to have to work on. That's going to be a piece that he's going to have to get into, his new location and his new franchise and work on these things. And he can lean a little bit and lose some bounce. That's not to say he's, inept from doing these as a run blocker. He is an effective run blocker, but as compared to Joe Alt, no, he has definitely got some of these things that he needs to work on that Alt is already doing at the very, very high level.
Yeah. So basically we see Alt as top 5. Positional could get in there.
Top 10. He could be a 4th or a 5th pick.
Yep.
But I mean, I think probably top 10, and at the very latest, just like in the first dozen picks.
Yeah, he's just an outstanding prospect. Can't go wrong with either. But if you're splitting hairs, those are the things that Positional would definitely need to work on to potentially overtake Alt on some draft boards. We'll see. Obviously, you're not going to see that at the combine or at a pro day per se. I think it's pretty well established. Yeah,
all those mirror drills that they do, he's going to look phenomenal at that.
Yeah, exactly.
The film study, you'll see it. You'll see the difference in run blocking in the film study.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be important when guys like this, when they're sitting down being interviewed, their recognition and they're showing their instincts and showing their football IQ. I think that's going to be a big deal when you're talking about 2 prospects at that level. So going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. Let's talk about the third guy, Coach. Again, Oregon State product, and you talked about him earlier. Let's talk about the number 3 prospect.
Our number 3 prospect, and we're going to go across the coast on the offensive line and talk about a right tackle here, and Talais Fuaga, the 6'5", 332-pound junior from Oregon State University. We talked about a player that is a Pacific Island Samoan heritage player that is currently a right tackle that played at Eugene, Oregon. That's about 6'5", 332 pounds, by the name of Peninsula. And he is our, stalwart right tackle of the Detroit Lions. And Talais Fuaga has some very, very similar characteristics. Out of Tacoma, Washington, he's a 2-time All Pac-12 selection, 1,564 career reps at right tackle. He's a right-sided tackle. So he's a little bit more of a run-dominant player. But he's 1,564 reps at right tackle. He never allowed a sack in his career.
Wow.
So, in fact, he's only allowed 5 quarterback hits. And he was first team All Pac-12 as this past season as captain or one of the captains for the Oregon State Beavers, which had a great football season. This is a real intriguing guy, not necessarily from the Detroit Lions perspective, but it's real intriguing what people want to do with Talais Fuaga. Do they want to keep him at right tackle? Do they want to nurse him over to the left side because of those his proficiencies and not yielding a lot of hits or sacks on the quarterback? I think this is a premier right tackle and somebody that can be mentioned in the breath of some other of the great right tackles in the NFL, given the right development and injury and avoidance of injuries. Talais Fuaga has some real impressive things about him that are going to really, really be something in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about him in greater detail here in a moment. Yeah, he's a stud, and I was curious what you thought about possibly his ability to transition to left tackle, and certainly, and that will be the case if needed. And we had the same thoughts about Sewell when the Lions drafted him. Like, he was going to have to go to the right side, which, it's easier said than done. But he certainly did a fantastic job with that, and that's a beautiful thing. And then traditionally, the right tackle isn't the blindside tackle for folks watching, so that can hurt your draft stock in a sense. But as you'll articulate here shortly about strengths, that may not be an issue here with Fuaga. Let's talk about his strengths.
Well, the right tackle oftentimes does look different than the left tackle in regards to what they're seeing in a pass rush and a pass rusher. A lot more bull rush and a lot more combo blocking type stuff on the right side than you do on the left side, when you usually see that angled wide rusher that you've got to be able to catch up to and angle off. You get a lot more physicality on the right side. Thus, you're going to see a lot more two-hand punches. It's just more acceptable from the right side. That would be a transitional piece to the left side. We'll talk about that in a second. But he plays bully ball, Drew. He's got a mean mentality. He's a natural right tackle. Take a look at his video clips. He takes it personally. There are some just absolute stunning punches he has in the pass game as a right tackle. But he's a dominating run blocker. Better run blocker than Fashanu. And probably, again, it's kind of apples to oranges as compared to Joe Alt. This guy's a dominant run blocker. That we can say. He's got heavy, mean hands. You can see he just put people to the ground. He put people to turf with some of his two-hand punches. He's positioned vertical. He can and could slide over to left tackle. Going to have to work on his pass rushing or his pass blocking a little bit to do so, but he could. And ding, 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 he could be moved inside because of some of his movement skills and just how aggressive he plays. He's very aggressive, and he works hard to leverage and reach, which, again, he's really, really good on the edge, especially in the run game. There's a lot to like with Talais Fuaga. He's a right tackle first, and boy, is he going to make somebody's offensive line a lot better.
Yeah, and, bottom line, and you bring up that he could possibly move inside. So as Lions fans, it's ding, ding. We're seeing, wow, really? Well, there's probably a 0.25% chance he would be there at 29, because I don't believe so. This is a top 10
if he
talent.
is, whoa, that's something that we should be thinking about. But yeah, you're right. He's just probably not going to get there.
Yeah, he's just I mean, definitely top 10, maybe top 15, but I can't even see him going much lower than 10, maybe 11 or 12. It's just he's that good. But there are some things he needs to work on, Coach, and let's talk about those.
Pass protection is a work in progress. Compared to, if we're just talking about three prospects right now, Fuaga, Fashanu, and Alt, he is definitely the third in pass blocking. He's a right tackle. I mean, it looks different from the right tackle. He's packed in there, battling two guys a lot of times, pinning in a two-gapper, pinning in a head-up rusher and a bull rush mentality. But, to carry over and be on the left side, or if somebody widens out and really is trying to have a jailbreak type pass rush and really have two edge guys, flexed out wide, there are some limitations there that he is going to have to grow into. He can get a little over aggressive. He can get a little too grabby, a little too personal battle oriented, and that's going to yield to some yellow flags. And those are some things he's going to have to clean up. He's going to have a boo-boo here and there. He can play a little, with maybe some bad penalties from time to time. Plays a little high in his pass sets and his pass pro. Just because, it's technically, it's not how he usually is coming off of the football. If you try to flex him out wide, he can stiffen up and get a little upright, which makes it very easy to gain on him and beat him. So the real nuanced high-end pass rushers are going to give Talais Fuaga a little bit of trouble. His feet can get a little inefficient with his technique. And those are the things that he's just got to clean up. But they're very coachable. very coachable, and things that he'll certainly will likely work on and play at a very elite level. Like you said, he is a top 15 pick in the NFL, pure form, and rightfully so.
He reminds me a lot of Tristan Wirfs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer out of Iowa a few years back. He as a right tackle, and I think he's got a similar skill set. And being a right tackle, there were these same questions that came up, and Tristan Wirfs has proved to be a very good pro, and I see him like that. So yeah, like Fuaga a lot. Definitely agree with you, Coach. Let's talk about the number 4 prospect now, Coach, out of the University of Georgia.
The one little switch that we made from our original ranking through our process through film study is moving Amarius Mims, the 6'7", 340-pound junior out of the University of Georgia, up from 5 to 4. And we'll talk about why that's the case here in a minute. He's a Georgia native from Cochran, Georgia. He was a 5-star prospect. Never heard of Georgia getting too many 5-star prospects these last few years.
Yeah,
they're
rare.
very uncommon. We haven't talked about many Georgia players these last couple of years. That is meant to be sarcastic, folks, because it seems like that's all we talked about last year. But we'll and Amarius Mims is one of several Georgia Bulldogs that we'll be highlighting this year. 801 career reps at right tackle for Georgia. He never has allowed a sack. He has never allowed a hit on a quarterback. Now, his sample size is much smaller than some of these other individuals that we've spoken of here previously. Only 801 reps. But he's allowed only 6 career quarterback pressures. Highly, highly productive player, especially in the 2023 year. And a very, very tough right tackle run blocker. A great pin player. He can pin down and down block as well as anybody in this draft. Amarius Mims is one of these guys that we're going to be talking about here right at the edge at the end of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about the reps not quite at the same level as some of the other guys we've talked about, but the level of competition in the SEC, nonetheless, second to none. And, this is a team that, lost to Alabama in the conference championship, which is the only reason why they didn't make the playoff. Georgia had a phenomenal year. And like you said, we haven't talked about a lot of 5-star prospects from Georgia recently. I mean, my gosh, their entire defense last year or 2 years ago was basically half of them were first-round picks. Is crazy. Great program, great success. And Mims a big part of that. Let's talk about what he brings to the table, Coach. What does he do well?
Well, some of Amarius Mims' strengths are that, he could be a real bargain slotted franchise tackle. I mean, you get, he's younger in his playing pedigree. As you can see, 801 reps. He does not have a lot of miles on him. There's a lot of moldability there. And, Amarius Mims, if he's a coachable young man, his ceiling is not nearly reached. So this could be a franchise offensive tackle. Massive frame with a great length. He's got the great levers. Really has all the markings and makings of a phenomenal reach blocker, an edge blocker, outside zone blocker. Phenomenal athlete. He operates with great competitive strength. Some of his 2-hand punches are just devastating. And that competitive strength really comes out in the run game. I think he's a very, very good run blocker. He's not Talise Fuaga as a run blocker, but he's a very, very good run blocker. And he plays with a real high energy level, kind of a spark plug, plays fast. He kind of operates like a tight end, and oftentimes he's going to have a tight end right outside of him too. And they really will work in tandem. Great speed and proficiency and blocking on the edge of the offensive line. He is a movement creator. He can really kind of move guys different than maybe a Fasciano. He does a better job of it than Olu Fasciano, in my opinion. And you know what? He is a very, very good pass protector. He fights with one hand, may do this a little bit more instinctively than Talise Fuaga. That just shows the ability of Fuaga as a run blocker. But Amarius Mims, I tell you what, this is somebody that could sneak up and swap out a couple of different names that we've mentioned already. He has that kind of capability.
Yeah, his draft slot, it's day one. as far as we're concerned. But at the same time, yeah, he could crack up into that top 15, top 10, even if someone really likes what they see and has that need. He could go into the 20 to 25 range, but that would only be because of other positional needs coming up and becoming more of a factor, i.e., quarterbacks, etc. And that could happen. But yeah, he's a top 15 talent, no question. But there are a couple of things he needs to work on. What do you see, Coach?
Well, at 6'7", 340, this is easy to do, but he can stiffen up and straighten up a little too much. Pad level gets way too high, way too often. Notice that just and even in some of his positive clips, he's playing at a pretty high pad level. That doesn't lend itself to a lot of success at the NFL level. That's going to have to be worked on. He's going to have to sit down into his blocks more and sink into his stance a little bit more. He can lose his balance a little bit, which he plays so fast and hard that sometimes when he goes to down block, when he does go to deliver that two-hand punch, that's something that maybe a coach is going to try to get out of his repertoire more, because it can be a kiss of death. It can be devastating, but it can also get you off balance and on the turf. And if you're an offensive lineman that's not up on his feet, you're no longer an offensive lineman. You're just in the way of somebody, which is the absolute antithesis of a good offensive lineman. So, and having said that, the one real thing that we really just don't know about Amarius Mims is truly exactly what is his ceiling. He's only played, so much. He's got a little, his playing time has been a little bit limited there. That's just due to the great players that they play at the University of Georgia. Amarius Mims is probably a 3-year starter anywhere else in the country. So, I mean, that's not necessarily a true negative, but we just don't know exactly with that. But, he's like I said, the two-handed punches are something that he's going to have to really work on and get away from as just being his number one thing in his arsenal. He punches he two-hand punches way too often. He gets him overextended, loses balance. And then what happens is he clutches and grabs. We clutch and grab as an offensive lineman. We're just sliding everything downhill. That's going to yield in holding penalties on the offense for number 65 in this case.
Yeah, great points, Coach. And like you said, though, a lot of these issues that Mims is showing on tape, they are coachable and correctable. So that's a positive. Athletic ability and football IQ, obviously need to be there. Athletic ability, every box is checked here. Football IQ, and he shows he definitely is a good instinctive player. It's going to be up to GM to GM and coaching staff to coaching staff to figure out, how they work with Mims. But I think every team in the league would certainly like an Amarius Mims on their roster. So that's not the question. But it just becomes about slotted value in day one, where he definitely will be. Let's talk about the number 5 prospect, Coach, out of the University of Alabama. Another program that's no stranger to 5-star recruits, right?
No, they are not. No, they are not. And this is a guy that earlier in our process was swapped out with Mims based on the run blocking, facet. Just thought Mims showed a little bit more as a run blocker than J.C. Latham. But J.C. Latham is another first-round potential player. And if you look at his size and where he is at right now, that is absolutely devastating. Yes, that's not a typo. He is a 6'6", 360-pound junior out of the University of Alabama. And he rates out as our 5th prospect. He's from up here. He's from up this way, and I'm sure he was a guy that the University of Michigan tried to lure over from the state of Wisconsin. And I'm sure the home staters there down in Madison tried to keep him home. But what he decided to do towards the end of his high school career is he transferred down to Bradenton, Florida, and went to the IMG Academy. So he's one of these famed IMG prospects who, I know there's a lot of brand there, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're a superstar that you went to the IMG Academy. But that certainly also speaks to the type of player that was coveted out of the high school time that he played. 5-star prospect out of the IMG Academy. Went to the University of Alabama and had 1,748 career reps at right tackle. So in some ways, we're going out on a limb and putting Mims ahead of Latham. And I think a lot of prognosticators have Latham ahead of Mims based off of the career sample size that Latham was be able to have. 140 career reps at right guard. So the vast majority of these were spent at right tackle. He's a right-sided lineman. He showed some position versatility. So that's something to be looking at as well. In those 1,748 career reps, 2 career sacks, 6 career quarterback hits, and all of those reps. And he didn't allow a sack in 2022. Now, you look in the Rose Bowl, there were a couple of series where they could not keep Jalen Milroe upright. If we look, a lot of that stunting took place from the interior, but there were some edge moments too where J.C. Latham was leveraged a little bit there in some of the big-time blitz schemes. But at 6'6", 360 pounds, man, do you have a prospect here. And I tell you what, he may very well have the capability of moving down inside at right guard. And I tell you what, Robert Hunt of the Miami Dolphins, eat your heart out. This kid right here could be something else if they would do that there. But he also stands to be a great right tackle prospect in the NFL. Late first, early second is where I'm seeing him, Drew.
Yeah, that's intriguing, and I think I'm quite certain Brad Holmes has Mr. Latham on his radar because. But again, you got to. Is he able to? He's played inside, which is great. If they feel he can be very effective there, wow. I mean, you've got as a Lion fan, you have your number one backup tackle, and then you've likely got a starting guard on your hands. So I'm really curious to hear your breakdown, Coach. Yeah, let's talk about.
Yeah, well, I mirror you, Drew. I see it exactly how you do. I mean, this kid plays for 6'6", 360 pounds. He plays with tremendous twitch and explosiveness off the football, which is going to bode well for his ability to play either one of those positions. Again, his sample size and the vast majority of his career has been spent on the edge at right tackle, or more towards the perimeter of the offense, at least we should say. But he does have a little bit of this capability at guard and that twitchy quickness at guard at that kind of size. Woof, that's something impressive. Heavy, strong anchor as a blocker. He plays with, and you would expect so at that kind of size. But to have as strong of an anchor as he does, he's very rhythmic and smooth. He's a very, very good pass setter, very good pass blocker, real good with it. He's from the state of Wisconsin, went as a young man, 15, 16 years old, down to school in Florida, and is really shown to play that early in a Nick Saban system, which is a very highly accountable football system that the legendary coach had at any of his stops, but most specifically at Alabama. He's got a high IQ. He's got a high, and I think he has the ability to be somewhat position versatile. Now, he's been much more right-sided than anything, but he works very well with guards as a combo blocker. I did see some examples of that in some of his film and during film study. Just saw a little bit more of Mims as an offensive tackle run blocker than I did from J.C. Latham. But this, I tell you what, there's an awful lot to like with this guy. An awful lot to like with him.
Yeah, I'm more intrigued as we're going through this right now. It's definitely piqued my interest. As I quite frankly, I didn't necessarily see him being there at 29 per se, but I think he will be. There's a good chance of it. So he's definitely going to be on the Lions' radar for sure, among other teams. But let's talk about what he can improve on.
Well, like a lot of these guys, the overextension with the two-hand punch is something they're going to have to refine. That's just all of these prospects, minus Alt, minus Fashanu. You didn't see those guys do a lot of it. I mean, you did see Alt doing a little bit more than Fashanu, but again, he also gets away with it a little bit more because of his reach. He can overextend and lose his balance a little bit. And that also comes with how quick and twitchy he is. He can overextend and lose balance. Little stiffer in the lower half than maybe some of these other guys. And at 6'6", 360, can you expect that a little bit? Sure. but also at that size, is he going to get to be more of a waist bender? The longer he plays, that is a concern, certainly. He really struggles with the interior pass rush move, which means it's a guy starting outside and countering the crosses face inside. That we saw a lot of in the Rose Bowl, and he did struggle with it. Milroe was running for his life at a few times with some of Jesse Minter's dial-ups as far as some blitz and stunt schemes that U of M threw in that Rose Bowl. And he definitely was a struggle. He struggled in that capacity. He can lunge and grab a little bit, which, when we are becoming desperate as a blocker because of our inability to use the foot technique and punch to deliver the proper block, we start to lunge and grab. Here come out the maize hankies. And I'm sure maize is not a color that the people down at the Crimson Tide want to talk about too much, because they done got their ass beat in the Rose Bowl this year, and I don't mind saying that one bit. But I do like J.C. Latham.
Yeah,
I do like J.C. Latham as a prospect. And coming back to you, Drew, you just hit it perfectly. You hit it perfectly on the head. Is that this is a guy that really is interesting for the Lions and kind of how things are progressing through. Could he be a guy that, sorry, we can only pay one of our guards, we're going to move him down inside. And then when the timing is right, he's going to go back to his natural position of right tackle when our time to say goodbye to Taylor Ducker happens and Penei Sewell moves over to the left side. So there could be some blueprint for a guy like J.C. Latham if he's there, because Drew, those are physical attributes and a toughness that don't come around all the time. And this is another guy that could sandwich up into the first 25 picks of the draft very easily. But this is also somebody that could start being of the type of prospect we start seeing in and around the Detroit Lions 29th pick. And boy, would that be an intriguing selection. I know we've got a lot of things that we're going to be talking about with Lions, but offensive line always needs to continue to be one of those position groups that we talk about with the Lions, because it's where things start and end with them.
Yeah, and very well said, Coach. And we have one more prospect to cover before we go to to our dark horses here. So without further ado, let's talk about from Washington. I know we saw them in the playoffs too. Let's talk about this young man here, our number 6 prospect on the board.
Well, we just talked about one prospect that fell victim to the maize and blue in the Rose Bowl, and this is another prospect, the purple and gold, couldn't quite finish. This was not the 1978 Rose Bowl. This was the 2024 National Championship game, and Troy Fautano's valiant efforts fell to the leaders and best and the valiant heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, not to throw any shade at the University of Washington for not winning the national title and losing their coach to the University of Alabama, who lost in the Rose Bowl to Michigan. We have a great offensive line prospect here in Troy Fautano, offensive tackle prospect. Could have probably labeled him an offensive lineman. I probably could have labeled him as an offensive lineman, Drew. 6'4", 317 junior, and we'll talk about why. Yes, he's our 6th rated offensive tackle prospect, which doesn't necessarily mean he's not a first-round tender player, because he's very impressive. Very impressive. Comes out of Henderson, Nevada, big suburb of Las Vegas, has produced a lot of fine football players. He starred in football and volleyball in high school. In the state of Michigan, volleyball, we don't see played, boys don't have a lot of it. In other states and other regions, it's a much bigger sport. And it's a very athletic sport. And he was a star out of the Las Vegas area. He's the 2023 Morris Trophy winner, which goes to the best lineman in the Pac-12. We're talking about not just offense, but defense as well. We talked about Thales Fuaga, folks. He's also in the Pac-12. So this is an individual that is highly, highly decorated and thought of. 2-time All Pac-12 selection, 2,027 career reps at left tackle. Played a lot of football for the Huskies, and he has 99 career reps at left guard. So we talked about a guy in J.C. Latham that played a lot of right tackle with a little bit of right guard. This is a guy that played a lot of left tackle with a little bit of left guard. So another very intriguing prospect if you're talking about with the Detroit Lions. 3 career sacks allowed, 5 career quarterback hits allowed out of 2,027 reps. So extremely, extremely proficient guy. This is an intriguing prospect for the first round. Let's just start right there, because this is a guy that has that position versatility, proven position versatility that the NFL franchises like. And more specifically, this is a prospect the Detroit Lions are going to be looking at, because he could be a long-term answer at left guard.
Yeah, and exactly, Coach. And that this was the first name that came to mind looking at it. And folks may ask, well, why would you do that? Just re-sign Jonah Jackson and Graham Glasgow. Oh, you can, but then you're going to be letting some other folks walk, like guys like St. Brown. Maybe you can't re-sign a Jared Goff. Maybe Peninsula cannot be re-signed at this point. Maybe Hutchinson can't be. Oh, that's where the thought process is coming from. And you don't want to lose a Jonah Jackson or a Graham Glasgow. I don't believe they'll lose Glasgow unless he's looking for more money that's above and beyond maybe what their budget is. But Jonah Jackson, great player, but likely going to be in another uniform because he's going to command more money, and teams that maybe can pay that position group and don't have to pay at other position groups. And it's just the way the Lions situation is. I love Troy Furtado. Talk about what you like about him, Coach.
Well, first and foremost, and this is where we don't have a feature. Maybe this is for the 2025 draft, but we could have a little feature of a little Lions target here. And if we want to mention Lions target, Troy Furtado will be the first name of the presentations that we give here throughout this draft season as a potential Lions target. He is has very impressive position versatility. He has experience at the Pac-12 level and big major BCS Power 5 level at left tackle, left guard, and right tackle. We need a left guard real quick, and we're going to need a right tackle down the road, because our right tackle is going to switch to left tackle. And he could also be the starting left guard and our swing offensive tackle. That's a very, very valuable piece. The type you draft in the first round, Drew.
Yeah.
The type you draft in the first round. Extremely physical run blocker, music to our ears, but that should be the music to every GM and coaching offensive coordinator and offensive line coach's ears throughout the NFL. Very physical in the run game. He's got great mobility and is a very effective puller, which is going to help him be position versatile and scheme versatile too. Very good out in screens. Very good on outside passes like grizzly screens or slip screens that are thrown to receivers as well. Real good at just outside runs and logging in a pulling block. Real good at it. Heavy, powerful puncher. He's another movement creator. 6'4", 317. We just got done talking about a couple of offensive tackle prospects that are bigger, but this guy moves people just as well as they do. He's got very good athleticism, which again speaks to his position versatility. He's a very agile and nuanced in his pass sets. He can also be a one-hand puncher and a guy that works well the edge. It's his anatomical, dimensions that sometimes get him lost. Those long, leathery 6'6", 6'7" pass rushers can be a little bit much for him because of they're able to leverage him with just better length. But he's a very good pass rusher, very tactical and technical blocker. Doggone it, Drew, this guy sounds good. I really am I mean, Troy Furtado, yes, he's our 6th prospect, but man, does he sound good for the Honolulu Blue and Silver, in my opinion.
Yeah, his draft slotting fits in nicely. His versatility, he kind of checks every box for the Lions. And yeah, to be able to play left guard right off the hop, which I believe he'll be a more successful guard inside because of the length issues you pointed out. And I know you'll talk about that shortly, but yeah, man, this is not saying it's a slam dunk that's what they'll do, because there'll be other position groups that will have a very good representative there too, i.e. cornerback, defensive inside defensive tackle, those kind of positions. So that's what likely will be available there. But yeah, Furtado, is high on the list, no question, but some things to work on too, right, Coach?
Yeah, I did not see a lot of it in my film study with him. But if in going through the scouting reports on Troy Fatano, as people are concerned about his length on the edge, especially at left tackle. What we see these defenses do is a lot of times they will extend that perimeter rush threat out as wide as they possibly can to arc on that left tackle. And excuse me, if you're not able to get out there, hitch step, and get out there and create an angle to cut that player off. And some of that's going to have to be with your punch and your ability to break that angle down. If you're not long enough to do so, they're just going to gain on you and become, and create all sorts of quarterback hurries at the very least. Yeah. So these are some things that I think that are spoken of a little bit in his scouting reports, and that were used in some of his, in some of his critique. Again, and in the film study that I saw, I didn't see a lot of examples with it. I saw devastating two-hand punches in the run game and devastating two-hand punches when he checked away from the outside threat and worked and helped with a guard on an inside pass rush threat. I mean, just put them to their knees with his devastating punch. But that length, that is going to be something that really has a lot of people saying move this guy inside, at least for the interim. He almost uses too many techniques. It's like he's so coached up and has so many different arsenals in his repertoire that he's maybe not the greatest at a given one. He's got so many different hand placements. He's got to work on maybe mastering a couple of these. And again, does that need to happen this split second? Not necessarily, because he's probably moving inside, at least for the interim. So, I mean, that would change things in of itself. So again, is that a critique and a criticism? Yes, but not one that might be all that glaring really in the end. He can be maybe guilty. And I did see him operating so fast and so explosive and so hurried at times that could lend itself to being an issue against some of the better pass rushers. They could just make up one move and devastate him and throw him to the inside. And here they are coming free to the quarterback, especially as an offensive tackle. Got to maybe work a little bit more with a little bit more of a savvy approach and not be so hurried in some of his progressions as a blocker. Again, his hand discipline, he uses so many different ones. He needs to get better at a couple of others, because if not, he's going to become a clutcher and he's going to be a little bit prone to the flags. But again, I really do think we're seeing a guy that's got more of a guard than a tackle, even though we're critiquing him and ranking him as a tackle. And he's one of the best tackles in this draft.
It's impressive. It's very impressive. And yeah, as a Lions fan, again, extremely, I got to reiterate it again, extremely intrigued by Fatano at number 29 there being an option. He might not be, early draft models, it's hit and miss. Sometimes he's going above. I've rarely seen him get past the Lions per se, or not out of the first round.
Right in around there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's right in that. Yeah, that 25 to 20 to 30 range right there. So it's going to be real interesting. But man, yeah, I'm excited about the potential of adding a player of Fatano's caliber to the Lions at either guard position, preferably left guard. That would be great, because that's Jonah Jackson's spot. And like I said, it's just I'd be very surprised as a fan if they were able to pull it off and re-sign him. I'd welcome it if they could. He's an all-pro, multiple Pro Bowl player. I mean, Jonah Jackson, a very good football player. This is about salary cap, is what this is. So we shall see. But Coach, we got some dark horses to talk about, like I mentioned earlier, and I'll kick us off here, no pun intended. Jordan Morgan out of the University of Arizona, offensive tackle. He's from Marianna, Arizona. He's all Pac-12 player. He had over 2,200 career snaps at left tackle for Arizona. Only 3 sacks allowed between 22 and 23, and only 3 quarterback hits allowed in that span as well. So obviously very, very stingy when it comes to giving up any pass rushers to the quarterback. Strengths go, he's explosive and energetic. So he's a leader. You see that C on that jersey. It's there for a reason. This is a leader out there on the field and off the field. So definitely like his character. Really seems to overpower edge rushers with really huge torque. So he definitely uses his 6'4", 312-pound frame to his advantage in that respect. And he's got very good movement skills. So real agile. He's not super heavy for a tackle. And I say 312 is not super heavy. We talked about guys who are 360, 340, right? So 312, 6'4", really kind of prototypical size there for tackle. Great bender at the hinges and has great flexibility. And that's what you like to see. He's not 6'8", 6'7", where he kind of plays more stiff. He's a little just slightly shorter. Again, he's not small, he's 6'4". But it tends to give you better pad level as well. And then heavy mass and strong anchors. So he's able to lock in. Having good pad level lends to that as well. So very, very intrigued by Jordan Morgan's positives here. Some things he needs to work on. The question is he long enough for an NFL offensive tackle? The same questions we had with Fatanu come up with Jordan Morgan. But what Fatano has over Morgan is reps inside already and reps at different positions, where Morgan's been pretty much exclusively a left tackle for the Wildcats at Arizona. Footwork still needs refinement. And again, that can be an issue. And I'd ask you, Coach, I mean, is that something that's pretty coachable, or is that something you kind of got to have on your plate when you come to the party?
Well, they look for it. I mean, they certainly look for it. But I mean, yes, it is a coachable technique. You don't have a lot of time. This is not a 5-year scholarship. It's a rookie contract. So you need to be able to show that you're going to get out of some of these habits rather quickly. What it does right off the top is it lends to you not being a starter right away. So if that's the case, I don't know of a lot of teams that are drafting in the first round that are not looking at a guy that's at least going to be a rotational piece. You don't see rotational offensive tackles. You see starters and reserves. And, that could lend to him being more of a day 2 guy in that regard. I love how he operates, and watching film study of him. And, he played, obviously in a very high level league in the former Pac-12 and was part of very much a resurgence of a program under Judd Fish, who's now the head coach of the University of Washington, down there at Arizona, not dissimilar to the current Michigan State coach Jonathan Smith's run at Oregon State. Big resurgence, and like Talise Fuaga, Jordan Morgan was kind of the pillar of that offensive line, and showed just a very, very comfortable, smooth operator as that left tackle. A lot to like, and that is he's a classic left tackle. May not possess the position versatility that some of these other players that we've talked about is. But that being said, he is a very, very skilled left tackle.
Yeah, I see him there at late in the first round, like you said, he could go there. I hadn't considered. I love his skill set, but after digging, I don't see him moving inside, and that's why I hadn't really considered him personally for the Lions. Certainly at 29, but really like his game a lot. Another thing that you pointed out here that we need to talk about too, he can straighten up and run blocks, which tells you he's definitely more comfortable as a pass blocker, and certainly as a left tackle, that's something that's extremely important, and he's very good at it. Certainly something that will need to be worked on, and then needs to take better angles consistently. Yeah, in the NFL, I mean, when you've got like you've said earlier, the Bosa brothers or Hutchinson or Chris Jones coming at you, they're gonna challenge you in that regard. So that's definitely something he'll have to shore up. And I agree with you. That's why I see Jordan Morgan as more of an early day 2 guy. I can't see him slipping past the middle of the second round though, Coach. I think his game's just too good, and he's too physically gifted to go that far. Someone's going to make good use of a guy like Jordan Morgan for sure on their team. You got Tyler Guyton up here from the University of Oklahoma, Coach. Let's talk about him. What do you like?
Well, getting back to the long prospects, 6'7", 328-pound junior out of Oklahoma, Manor, Texas native. He's an all Big 12 selection. He transferred from Texas Christian. He has over 1,000 career reps at right tackle for Oklahoma and about 70 career reps at left tackle for Oklahoma and TCU. Another one of these highly, highly efficient, productive players. 2 career sacks out of, nearly 1,100 career reps. 0 sacks allowed this year. Didn't allow 1 for Oklahoma. 3 quarterback hits allowed in his career. Once again, highly productive offensive tackle prospect. He has the length of the modern offensive tackle. That's the body type they're looking for. He fits the physical profile that these GMs and scouting teams, the scouting groups are looking for within each organization. He's very good athlete, explodes off the line with heavy hands. He really can come in. He does possess a lot of two-hand punching at this point in time in his career. But again, we're looking at more of a right tackle now than we are a left tackle. He's a little bigger than some of these other ones as far as length goes as well. He's more in the vein of a Marius Mims or a J.C. Latham in regards to his length and size. Very savvy, blitz pickup guy. Played fair share of football, and he gets football. Tyler's a bright young man and kind of understands this. This goes without saying, and it's going to jump him up some boards and get him on the field as a starter sooner rather than later in the NFL. Has great maintenance of his balance and his power and his leverage. He does all 3 of those things quite well. Plays with a great anchor with his balance and power, as well as being able to be athletic enough to run and leverage people on the edge and do things in space as an athlete. Very impressive stuff. Again, he can get raced a little bit. And what I mean by race, somebody's going to race his outside hip. The outside pass rusher is going to give him some trouble. That's why he bodes much more on the right side on the NFL than he does on the left side, where those kind of matchups are much more consistently there. He needs to work on his hand fighting. Again, he's not the most nuanced pass setter like we've talked about with some of these other prospects. Those are some things that are work in process. He's not the reach block. Because of that, he's not the reach blocker he should be, given his athletic ability and his size and rangy ability. Those, in his pad level can get a little high at times, causing these leverage issues as well. So this, as you can see, there's a little bit of a difference in these prospects maybe than we were talking about prior to, which is going to push them further down the line. He's got a little bit limited time as a starter as well. Didn't play a ton at TCU, came over to Oklahoma and didn't play a ton right away there either. But he played long enough to get over 1,000 career reps. And he's shown a lot of signs to be a very, very, very intriguing middle round prospect. Maybe day 2, middle end of second round, early-ish third. But man, is somebody going to get a quality player and probably a starter sooner rather than later. And a guy that's probably very, very likely, as long as he doesn't get hurt and he translates a little bit, to be at least a 2 contract player.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And the thing with Guyton, he's one of those. Of course, we talked about our top 5. We saw top 6, but Patano we view more of it as a guard. But the top 5 guys, most of them are going to be gone before pick 20. But there's a lot of teams that are tackle needy that just aren't drafting high enough to grab those elite guys. So then they're going to go to this next level, and to get a Tyler Guyton on day 2. Whew.
Absolutely. Or to your point, if there is a run on those guys in the top 15, 20 picks, and there's somebody looking for a tackle, he could slide into the 20s.
Yeah,
he could
absolutely.
slide into, he could. Absolutely.
No, he's a very intriguing prospect. Let's bring up Graham Barton out of Duke. And Duke, not a traditional football school, but certainly over the last 10 years, they've improved immensely, and they're certainly fun to watch. They had a good season this year, and he was one of the big reasons why. And Barton really, coach, was one of the first tackle names that came up that, at least very early on in the draft process, say like in December, early January, where it was like, oh, this guy could slide inside. So that versatility is very, very helpful for him. He's from Brentwood, Tennessee. He had 430 snaps at center as a true freshman, and then another 2,100 plus snaps at left tackle for Duke. No sacks allowed while playing inside at center. So Graham Barton can move inside. Now, why is this important? As a Lions fan, you're looking for somebody that could, obviously, Graham Glasgow was very valuable last year because at any given time, either Big V, Jonah Jackson, or Frank Ragnow were injured. Having a Graham Barton on the roster, very, very important. I would argue without Graham Glasgow last year, the Detroit Lions might not make the playoffs. He was that important. It's that important to have that starting five, or that five-man group up there ready to play, and they play at a high level. And I really like Graham Barton, and here's why. His first step. He's a heavy striker. It's a very formidable first step. So he's quick to react off the snap. We like that. He's a scrapper and fights to the whistle, so he's aggressive and he's very, very energetic out there. So you like that. Relentless finisher, plays with great tenacity. Again, you can't stress enough having passion for the game and passion for your play, and he seems to exude that every time, every snap. And when you look at the film, you can see it. Has impressive range and mobility. He's 6'5", 314 pounds. That's impressive to be that big and be able to have good range and mobility. And he's seen by many as a potential true utility offensive lineman. Again, this is why, as Lions fans or any team that's loaded at tackle but needs help inside, this is a guy that's got to be on your radar. And I'm talking early, like the first round. The Lions need to look at Graham Barton in the first round. Now, we just talked about Guyton being a mid to, and Morgan being, second round guys. Graham Barton is too. But if he can show a GM like a Brad Holmes or folks like that, I'm going to be a very, very efficient inside lineman, he could come back. He could come up and get drafted higher up. His football IQ lends to more in his potential versatility. So again, he's aggressive. He plays hard. He's got size. He's got mobility. He can play potentially any position on the line. That's a guy that's got huge value. So what are the issues? He may not be much of an offensive tackle prospect in the end, but more of an inside guy. So again, the offensive tackles tend to be the higher draft picks. They tend to have the higher slotting because they tend to protect the quarterback backside, right? So that's what happens. So it's not necessarily a knock on Barton. It's more just the position group as a whole, how it's valued. Timing and hand placement still a work in progress. So again, his coach alluded to and several of the other prospects, that's coachable. So he may not start initially on some teams immediately inside. Now, again, this is what will hurt his draft stock. If a team like the Lions, for instance, that has a need at guard and they feel he can't start right away, he may become a day two guy. Again, we won't know that until these GMs really do the interviews, and then we see the pro day, etc., and see the combine. So that's going to be a big question mark, Graham Barton. Again, tenacity can lead to bad habits and bad penalties. You can be too aggressive. We certainly have seen linemen in the NFL and certainly coach in Detroit. Logan Stenberg comes to mind right away. The intensity and the uber aggressiveness can hurt you. It kind of did him. It was more of a red flag with Stenberg, though. I don't think it's as much with Barton, but it's certainly something you need to be careful of. And I think during the interview process, you get the feel for what the mindset is of a prospect, certainly. And he can be vulnerable at tackle to the higher skilled pass rushers. So again, we don't see him necessarily being a full-time NFL tackle. It's a position he can play. Certainly, he played a ton of it in Duke, but we see him definitely more inside. And coach, I kind of, if all things fall in line, I wouldn't be shedding too many tears if Graham Barton was the Lions pick at 29 because of his versatility and ability. If he can start inside immediately, I like him there. I was curious your thoughts.
Absolutely. And this would be another guy that would get a bullseye. He'd get a Honolulu blue and silver bullseye along with Troy Fatano. This is a target right here. And we have to look at this one. He's a little bit different than Fatano in that I think Troy Fatano's a better offensive tackle than Graham Barton is. I think he does pass protect better than Graham Barton. I think they have very similar demeanors in the run game. And Graham Barton's a very highly effective run blocker. A little bit different player. This is a guy that maybe showed his best attributes in his college career at center as an 18, 19-year-old. So this really lends to an interesting perspective as well, too. He is probably even more than Fetanu being projected as a guard, even though he does not have a lot of playing experience at the guard position. He's a very bright young man, high football IQ, very coachable, very tough. That lends to a guy that could make that transition, pretty easily. That being said, his long-term strength may be at center. We have an all-pro center in Frank Ragnow, who has alluded to potentially being a guy that, could wrap it up in the next 3 or 4 years, or even sooner. Injuries have taken a bit of a toll on Frank, and Frank wants to be able to walk and enjoy his family and life. So more than props and respect to that, above and beyond all things, we may have a need at center down the road. Could Graham Barton fulfill a need at guard and give us depth in a swing offensive tackle and a guy that could help us with some of the Dan Skipper reported type stuff in the interim to be the long-term answer at center once our all-pro center decides to retire, which probably still is a couple years away? Oh boy, that's an intriguing prospect. So, Drew, you did a great job of bringing up what this guy brings to the table and what it's going to look like for him, likely at the NFL level. We are probably talking about a guard here. Likely, at least at first.
Yeah, no question. And I'm very intrigued by Graham Barton. I wouldn't say I'm 100% bought in because, as I talked about earlier, I don't know if he's viewed as an immediate starter inside, but if he is, he's going to be considered late in the first round. No question. Coach, here's another guy. I know you like him from BYU, Kingsley Suamataia. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, big Kingsley Suamataia from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, 6'4", 329-pound redshirt sophomore. He's an Utah prospect. He comes right out of the state of Utah. He was a 5-star guy that originally went to the University of Oregon. 687 career reps at right tackle, 655 career reps at left tackle. So he's very balanced. This is a guy that is position versatile, specifically at the tackle position. He's played both of them, and at the college level about almost equally. He has 2 career sacks, whether he's at the right or the left side, and about 1,330 reps, 1,342 reps, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
That's great proficiency. 9 career quarterback hits. What's really intriguing, some of the things that I do with Zebra and Next Gen Stats with the NFL, they do a little bit differently at the college. They do with a GPS tracker through Catapult at the college level. A lot of the colleges use that technology to do some of their advanced measurements. Kingsley Suamataia has been clocked as a 6'4", 330-pound young man as an offensive tackle at almost 22 miles an hour on the field. This is a kid that's got get up and go and explosive athletic ability. He's an outstanding athlete for a young person of his size and stature. He is the factor, or was the factor, at the point of attack for the Cougars at BYU when it came to the run game or in pass pro. He was that guy. He plays with a great calculated and competitive kind of controlled fury, so to speak. And this is going to be great for him. We're talking about a guy that's going to play. He's not just going to get drafted and going to be around for a while. He's going to be a player. People are going to that follow the NFL game are going to know Kingsley Suamataia by name. He maintains blocks very well, and he climbs to the second level with ease. These are very important things that we see. His proficiency at tackle is very good. We talked about a few guys that might need to move inside. Kingsley Suamataia does not need to move inside at 6'4", 330. He can handle himself out on the edge, plays with great frame and a big, thick frame and a great anchor. And he's really good down blocker and sealer, what they call a pin blocker. He is excellent at it. Lots to like in that regard with as far as his run game capability. Outstanding run blocker as an offensive tackle. He has shown a tendency to get overextended a little bit, probably a bit of a two-hand puncher. I didn't see a lot of that in my clips, although, I mean, I saw a lot of two-hand punches in the run game. I think it's just a natural tendency for him. It's probably something that's in his repertoire that they're going to have to work out a little bit. And he can be a little inconsistent with his hands. That lends to being a two-hand puncher too. He's relied probably on that technique a little too much in his career, even though I saw a lot of examples of him hand fighting quite well. He needs to learn the game. He's still kind of in that process. He is a redshirt sophomore, which I know is technically a junior, but he's still learning this game. And some of the nuances defenses throw at him could kind of lend him doing the things that the defense exactly wants him to do, and what they're trying to do. He's got to be coached up in those areas. That's film study. That's coaching. Those are things that can improve quite easily. His timing is a work in progress. Maybe he doesn't pick up the blitzes quite like a Jordan Morgan can, and J.C. Latham and some of these guys. He maybe doesn't pick those blitzes up quite as well. Again, that's a work in progress. Kingsley's a young player, and he's got some room to grow. A little bit over aggressive at times, and that can lead to some misses. He can whiff on on blocks, and he can also get a little bit clutchy and grabby and lunge and get thrown some flags on him too. Kingsley is a borderline starter right out of the gates, and a guy that could be a long-term starter in a Pro Bowl caliber offensive tackle in this league. Probably a day two guy. We're talking about a day two guy here. Earlier day two, yes, earlier than later, I would have to say. Kingsley Suamataia, certainly an interesting prospect.
Yeah, agree with you 100%, Coach. I love him. I think he'll go higher in round 2 if there's a team with an immediate need at like right tackle. I think that and that'll be a perfect situation for him. But yeah, anybody that gets this guy is going to get a hell of a prospect and an eventual starter at either tackle. Yeah, definitely really like him. Great value on day 2 here. Would I consider him in Detroit? Well, because of the situation, he wouldn't be necessarily, because by the time they would have their 3rd round or 4th round picks, he's going to be gone, right? So it's just a matter of I just don't think they can spend a 1st or 2nd round pick on a tackle when there really isn't an immediate need for that. But that's not a knock on him. It's just the way. And every team's got their situation. So that's why I really like Dominic Puni, excuse me, out of Kansas, because he absolutely can move inside. He's from St. Charles, Missouri, so not too far outside of Kansas where he went. He transferred from Central Kansas, which is a D2 school. He made all Big 12. He had 1,576 reps at left guard and left tackle for Kansas. Again, that's why he's definitely caught my eye. No sacks allowed at Kansas, and only 1 career quarterback hit at Kansas between left guard and left tackle. So certainly an exclusive left side guy, but can move inside, and that's what intrigues me, Coach. His strengths: he's a good athlete. He's really effective as a run blocker, which again, just keep it coming. The hits just keep on coming. Plays with excellent pad level. He's 6'4", 323 pounds. He's a senior, so he's an experienced player. Has good size, but again, is able to can make himself more compact in layman's terms, and that's what's important. He's long arm, knows how to use them, so that's great too, and relentless, and has a hot running motor. So he goes hard and he goes to the whistle. Solid anchor and strong hands. It allows him to create movement. So having leverage, having the length, having the strong hands, he can dictate where he's going to take his opponent, and that's just critical at the point of attack in the trenches. He's nasty, so he can maintain blocks and sustain blocks. He's got aggressiveness to him. I didn't see undisciplined though, and that's what's important, because when you get there, you want to make sure you're not undisciplined. Now, what does he need to work on? He does show some lower half stiffness, so that's something that certainly needs to be worked on. Pass blocking against higher caliber edges needs a revamping. As a tackle, that would be a huge concern. At guard, perhaps not as much. So maybe more in his being moved inside, that may not be as big of an issue. But he's a strong candidate to be moved inside the guard, which again you would hope would take away, at least cover up some of that. He's a big defensive lineman. They have been able to stonewall him. So again, that's where the lower half stiffness may come into play. So I think Puny can help himself a lot, Coach, with his pro day and at the combine to show that he has the agility and the strength to be able to handle that in the NFL. But I'll tell you what, I don't see him as a day one guy, but day two, if the Lions haven't addressed that position at pick 29, Dominic Puny to me is somebody they need to be looking at. Because I think if they don't get him in the round 2, round 3 could be a stretch. But that's pretty much where we see it. But overall, Coach, great job today. You did a fantastic job covering these guys. Appreciate you. But your closing thoughts on the tackle position for this draft?
Now, this is a position that is loaded with prospects, guys that can play. There are unfortunately some decent football players. They're going to probably be, guys that get cut on practice squads that would normally be 53-man roster players, just based on the depth of this position group. It's very, very deep. You're going to see, a lot of guys go early out of this group. A lot of guys go early, and those that go later are going to be guys that play, that you're going to see get out there. Dominic Puny is probably a starting guard somewhere in the NFL. And this is a guy that, like you said, we're talking about middle day 2 type grade tender. So, I mean, just an exceptional group of players that are really in many ways could be kind of, the main event and main attraction of this draft class.
Yeah, I'm excited about him. It is definitely, I mean, we just talked about 11 prospects, and I think we'd both be shocked if any of them slipped out of day 2. It's not going to happen. And many of them are day 1 first round caliber talents, but they may, just based on attrition and positional, they may slip to day 2. But yeah, this is a real exciting position group. And I love the versatility to be able to talk about some of these guys moving inside. That's what's just so big. So really looking forward to this and looking forward to this draft. And folks, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, give us your thoughts, give us your comments. And again, there'll be more content every week coming forward, every individual draft positional group up to the NFL draft commencing here in Detroit on Thursday, April 25th, first round. So we'll have our mock first round draft just before that. But yeah, definitely subscribe, folks. Keep watching. We appreciate you. And we will talk to you soon with some more draft prospects coming up. So for Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners, I'm Drew. Be safe, be healthy, everybody. Take care. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.